Welcome to Check In with Jason Lauritsen, where we explore how to create human, connected workplaces that employees love and that fuel organizational success. Each week, I invite someone who is leading the way in this work to join me for a conversation to help educate and inspire us. Today's guest is KeyAnna Schmiedl. KeyAnna is the Chief Human Experience Officer at Workhuman, where she's responsible for guiding the organizational strategy for talent, total rewards, learning and development, culture and employee experience, organizational design, corporate social responsibility, and DEI initiatives. Previously, KeyAnna was the Vice President of Social and Environmental Impact at Mozilla and the Global Head of Culture and Inclusion at Wayfair. KeyAnna, thanks for being here with me.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, I've had a long relationship with Workhuman, going back, I think, probably approaching a decade now, but you and I only recently met. And I can tell you, I remember the moment that I knew I wanted to meet you, and that was last year during Workhuman Live, because you were the MC. This was your first run at the MC. I don't know if you were voluntold or you raised your hand for that, but you were amazing. I was struck by that not only are you in this role, but on stage you were charismatic and you had such deep insight, and the conversations and the panels that you led were really good. I came away thinking, I have to meet this person. I want to have a conversation. So I'm delighted that we're here. I'm curious, as you think back about that event, I know you said it was kind of overwhelming being your first one because it's a big stage and a big event, but what's your favorite memory from last year's event?
Well, first, I have to say thank you. You are incredibly kind. I think I maybe if I can cheat and say that I have two, I have a personal favorite memory, and then maybe a little bit more pragmatic, work-friendly one. My personal favorite memory was getting to meet Baratunde Thurston backstage after kind of ending my broad MC duties for day one, and hearing him walk out on that stage and tell the entire audience that I was bringing all the haberdashery fashions. And I said, my gosh, what a fantastic phrase. And so that certainly stuck with me. But I think of my time at Workhuman Live last year, it was actually participating in the conversation about AI and people and how important it is to make sure that people who care about people are a part of that conversation. And so it felt like an incredible honor, but also like a proud responsibility of mine to represent the people in that conversation on the stage.
You know, and I remember that panel clearly because I am someone who I've never met a panel I didn't like to criticize, because I think oftentimes panels are poorly done, and it's sort of a lot of people this is not Workhuman, it's every place. Like, panels tend to be an easy way to put people on stage without getting really the kind of content you want. And we're at Workhuman talking about AI, which last year I felt a little weird about too. That panel was exceptionally well done. And it really struck me, like, the balance in that panel. And there were panelists that didn't agree with one another and were like having a little conflict. Like, it was awesome. It was perhaps the best panel I've seen, because there was just so much dynamics. Your panelists were great. You were great. There was just a lot of good stuff. So kudos. I'm glad that's a good memory, because it was an incredible memory for, I think, those of us that were on the receiving end of that panel as well.
Well, thank you.
Really
and I
good.
think, what felt special to me in being a part of that panel and having participated in others is a similar kind of experience of this feels different. And it was because it was an authentic conversation, right? We weren't necessarily trying to come across as these are the key points that have to be made, so much as we are coming from different beliefs and approaches, and how would we begin to kind of tussle around a subject such as AI and whether or not it's good or bad, and what about people. And I think it felt like an opportunity to sort of play out, what should this conversation look like in business, right? Like, this is how I want to have the conversation with my colleagues around the table who may have strong beliefs and opinions and all of the like. And so it felt good to be able to do that. It felt good to be able to represent my thinking, even if not fully baked in the moment. But to get some points across, and hopefully the biggest takeaway is this needs to be a discussion. It cannot just be a straight to implementation. It needs to be a discussion.
And it was really good. And actually, we're going to go deeper in this exact topic here in just a little bit. But for those that are maybe new to Workhuman Live or haven't heard of it, I want to let you in on, I guess it's hopefully not a secret, that Workhuman Live is an HR conference. It's an HR conference that Workhuman has been hosting, I think, for probably close to a decade now. Mm-hmm. My opinion, and my opinion's biased, maybe, or maybe it's informed. I don't know. I've been to almost all of them except the first one. I've spoken at many of them. My opinion, hands down, the best conference out there for HR leaders who truly care about people, who truly care about finding a path towards unlocking organizational performance in a way that actually is great for people too. It's content's always great. The networking is great because the people that come to this event are top quality and they really care about this work. Great event. I love it. I am delighted to have been invited back this year. And this year, on top of everything else, for me, it's also in one of my favorite places on planet Earth, the Colorado Rockies at the Gaylord there. And so I know you're going to be back on stage emceeing this year. I'm assuming you'll get to interview some folks again. What are you most looking forward to at this year's event?
Okay, again, I've got a two-parter. I am very excited to be able to interview Trevor Noah. I think that's going to be a fantastic conversation. And I know that so many folks that I speak to, especially right now with all the chaos in the world, are looking for that permission to say, can we laugh again? Can things be funny? How do we take ourselves and the work seriously, but not too seriously? And I think the conversation with Trevor Noah is an opportunity to explore that with somebody who literally has to do that for a living or has chosen to do that for a living, and to get a different perspective. So I'm really excited about that. And then I think, look, as somebody who discovered Workhuman through Workhuman Live in 2018, all of the breakout sessions, all of the panel conversations, but I think most importantly for me, all of the discussions that feel like those thorny topics that are hard to approach, and you're looking for how to be brave in those moments and have those discussions that you need to have at a business, all of those conversations happen at Workhuman Live. It is truly that place where, even now being in this role and having been on the stage, and yes, I was voluntold / just all of a sudden saw a sign that said my name and MC under the title. Even given that, I still feel that it refills your cup in a way that allows you to go, you know what, I'm on the right path. I'm thinking about this in the right way. I'm balancing care for the business with care for the people, and allows you to just kind of replenish that energy that you need to get back and keep doing it every day. And so that's what I'm most excited about.
I've always appreciated that. And by the way, if you're listening thinking like, wow, this is a really elaborate commercial for Workhuman Live, this is not a paid promotion. I love this event. I continue to go back because I love the event, and I love what happens there. And one of the things I've always appreciated is that despite, Workhuman is a product company. It's in the business of selling software that helps do this work. But I've always appreciated and been a bit amazed how at this event, we don't shy away from the things that are going on in the world, right? We're not shying away from conversations that need to be had, and they're had on the stage, and they're had in the conference rooms, and they're had during the networking and the lunch sessions. They're had everywhere, and I've always just appreciated that. We don't pretend like things aren't going on because this is a product-driven, organization. That's not how it works. So great event. Come see us, KeyAnna. I hope I have a chance to at least maybe give you a fist bump or high five or something in the hallway. You'll be busy, but at least maybe we'll intersect in real life there. I hope folks will join us. It's a pretty cool experience. But today we're here to do something different. We're not here to talk about Workhuman Live all day. We're going to talk about you and some of the great work you're doing actually internally within Workhuman with your team. We're going to go deeper into this kind of AI and humanity conversation. But before we do that, I would love to just take a minute to get to know you a little bit better, set some context. So before we get into this, can you tell us a little bit more about what your role looks like at Workhuman? What do you do there?
Sure. So I love to think that I have one of the most amazing titles in the world, and that's Chief Human Experience Officer for Workhuman. And so for anybody who's going, what exactly does that entail? It's the head of the people function, it's the head of the talent function, it's the head of the HR function, however you come to think of it, but it's that. And I think the title tells you a lot about our approach to the work, right? We think about this as what is the human working experience, one, that we want people to have, and then two, pressure testing that against what is the experience that people are having. So all those similar functions that you would think of on a respective people team exist, but coming from a place of, if our basis is about keeping the human in work and making work more human, then how can we make sure that we're walking that talk? How can we make sure that we're doing that from being customer zero? And so therefore using our products, giving feedback to the product teams, partnering with our consulting org and the customer excellence teams to understand where we have opportunities and where they can help to advise us, and also where we as practitioners can help to inform what's the next iteration or version of, the next launch in the product to help make life easier for folks so that they can get back to just caring about people and making sure that people are doing the best work that they can in an organization. So I think it's, part of that evolution that we always hope is happening in the HR space is having the conversation about how does this work continue to matter? And as it's moved into more of the strategic discussions, and you see people leaders as part of the C-suite, you see them partnering in so many of these conversations as we move forward, how do we make sure that we continue to balance that people perspective with what does the business need and ensure those two things are not in opposition to each other?
Well, and I have always thought that, and I think I even said this to you, that, being sort of the head of the people business inside of an organization like a Workhuman, or an organization that sort of helps other organizations do that, has to be kind of a blessing and a curse. Like, greatest job ever. And then also you have lots and lots of people that know a lot about how you do your job that you are responsible for. You assure me that it's almost all upside and good. So I'm going to take your word for it. I won't make you unpack the challenging part of it, because I'm sure it's better to have resources than the alternative. I am, however, curious about how you found your way into this work. Why did you get into, or how did you get into the people business side of this work?
Yeah, so I think ever since I was in grade school, I identified the need to be able to work with people well in order for outcomes, projects, et cetera, to succeed. I guess what I picked up on sooner than maybe I wish I had was that sometimes individual humanity gets in the way of building connection. And so for me, it just influenced my desire to study and continue to work to tease that apart, to think organizations are made up of people. If the people can't work well together, the organization is not going to succeed. So what makes people work well together? What are those positive reinforcements that exist out there that make you leave work and say, this was a good day, and I'm going home and I'm talking about it to my family, not because it was hard or not because I'm stuck on this one interaction that was negative, but actually because I had a positive experience at work and it made me feel good. And now it's making me think about how that can continue and what else I can contribute. And so I think having that mindset in general led me through a few different paths. One was around organizational behavior and effectiveness, right? Like literally the direct translation of how do you get people to work well together and function well together, but with a flavor of inclusion as a part of that. It always struck me that in these facilitations that we would do around challenging conversations or how to navigate conflict as a leader, what we're talking about is at at some core fundamental basis, you're realizing that somebody is different from you, and that is getting in your way of seeing that you should be partnering with them to find the solution, whether that's because your belief structure and hierarchy to power are different, whether it's because you're distracted by some visible dimension of diversity. No matter what it is, that's usually what's at the core, is I don't see you as similar to me in your thinking or in your approaches, and therefore I see you more as an obstacle to success rather than a key part of the success. And for me, that seemed quite obvious, but for a lot of folks at the time, it was just, how do you make those connections, and how do I remove kind of that lens or that framing in order to be able to have these productive conversations? So I started to dig into that a bit more. And in doing so, found that there was all this work around culture and inclusion inside of organizations. And so it was at an organization doing this work on a global scale that I was part of the team that was doing an RFP for a recognition program. And one of the folks that we brought into the process was Workhuman. And I remember from the second of seeing the product demo, I was like, this is it. They're thinking about this holistically. They're thinking about everything from recognizing the work that you're doing that's tied to strategic initiatives, but also those life events that happen, right? Recognizing that you just bought a new home, or that you just adopted a pet, or that you just completed your first marathon, or that you just had a baby and you were going through IVF. Like, all of those things happen to people who work. And so bringing that in as a part of work and celebrating that as a part of work seemed like an amazing prospect. And like, not everybody at the time was talking like that. And so going down kind of the road of building that partnership with Workhuman, I got to attend Workhuman Live. And I will never forget, I saw the person who was in my role before me kind of sitting there on the stage, happened to be interviewing Viola Davis and having this conversation that I went, how do you find a role like that? How do you find a role that allows you to have these broad discussions that all of them have nuggets in them about how to make the human experience better, and you can bring that into work? And then I saw Eric, the CEO, on stage, and I thought, if he is the same person off stage as he is on stage, that is an organization that I have to work with. And I remember coming home and telling my husband, I think how it starts is I apply for a role as janitorial staff, and then I work my way up to receptionist, and then somehow I dazzle them with a presentation at reception. I don't know, but like, I had this, master plan. And of course, that's not how anything works. And it was actually one of those things that therapists tell you of, like, in the moment when you're least expecting it, or in the moment when you're not looking for it, that the stars aligned, and I had this very unique opportunity to interview for this role, to meet with Eric a few times, and then to be offered this job. And it feels like the right moment in time for me to step in as the type of leader that I am to an organization that is uniquely positioned to lead the conversations in the way that we do. And it's incredibly humbling because, yes, I'm surrounded by other leaders in this space who have lots of thoughts on how to do the job well. And at the same time, it's been an honor to help build that consistency in our practice and our purpose and what we actually do on a day-to-day basis.
From Viola Davis to Trevor Noah, right? There's a nice arc right there. That is pretty nice. Not everybody gets to interview Trevor Noah, regardless of how great their job is. So this is a pretty cool gig. A lot of envious folks, I think. So I love it. Well, let's actually. Feels like a perfect place to kind of transition into the conversation that we wanted to have, because I think it's one that a lot of people are wrestling with right now, and that is back to AI. Let's go. As much as I think it's interesting, the fact that sort of you came out of, like, sounds like you found your way into this work through a real interest or deep interest in kind of human to human connection and all of the behavioral stuff. And I think that's the stuff that is most interesting to me. And I'll be honest, kind of as the AI stuff was coming up, I was like, I'm going to wait. I'm not going to react because I don't know how to react. I sort of sat back and I'm like, we still need to keep our eye on the ball of human to human stuff. And I think that's important, but it refuses to be ignored. And I thought there were some really interesting conversations last year at Workhuman Live. And in the last year, obviously, has seen all kinds of things rise up and organizations grappling with how to step into this work. So I'm curious from your seat as an organization internally, not necessarily as a product, but as an organization at Workhuman, how are you approaching AI and where you are headed with AI as a tool, as an enabler, as a technology?
Wow. I would start by saying we are approaching it thoughtfully, right? And I think it's important to understand the difference between thoughtful and careful. Thoughtful is, let me understand how you would like to be using it. Let me understand what you think all the positives and negatives are. And then let's co-create the right boundaries and guardrails together so that we're not, preemptively cutting off any good that can come out of leveraging tools like AI and generative AI especially. I think the careful approach is, let's start with the rules, let's start with the regulations, and let's force some of the work that's happening underground, whether it's intentional or unintentional, that then can lead to those unintended outcomes that at the end of the day, we're all trying to avoid. So for us inside of our organization, it was literally me tapping our chief technology officer on the shoulder and saying, you and I need to start an AI council. I'm hearing about some of the work that's spinning up and I've got my own questions, but I also don't want to hamper your team and any of the ideas or processes that they want to put in place. So can we partner on this together, and can we kind of co-own the strategy of how we approach this together? And then it started organically coming together where it was like, oh, well, we already have some folks who are working on the ethics of this. So let's create that as a lane. We already have some folks that are working on, well, what are all the tools and systems that we have now that have AI built into it? And what are the tools and systems that we feel like we might need? How do we want to think about that from a people and capabilities perspective? And then ultimately, how do we want to be able to talk about and leverage all of this in our own product and in our organization? And so as we've gone on and had those conversations, I will tell you that we went from meeting fairly regularly to really spacing out some of those meetings where we've said the right people are involved, the right people are aware. And so now we can feel good about the conversations that are happening and that we can kind of pull back together and just get updates every now and again, which is great. I think another piece that was really important was for us to start with our people, and starting by surveying our people to try to just get a baseline understanding of what is that baseline understanding of AI, right? Everybody's talking about it, but do we all mean the same things when we're saying AI? And one of the most important things to come out of that survey was actually that we needed to have a conversation around data literacy first, and then defining the different tools. Not everything should be labeled AI. And a lot of folks, when they think AI, they think generative AI. And so they're, understanding that subtle nuance and difference. We got a lot of folks chiming in, with suggestions on how this could help them in their daily workflows. And some of those things were like, hey, you could just automate this within Excel, right? Like you could create a formula within Excel to do some of this work. Not all of it needs an AI solution. And I think that that's the other piece. When you have something that grabs hold of the zeitgeist in the way that AI did over the last, say, 18 months plus, what happens is that everybody thinks that they need it for everything. And you get a lot of people saying that it can be leveraged for everything. And that's not true. I don't think it will ever be true. And I think one of the critical conversations that we continue to have is, where do we want this to be an enhancement to the day-to-day efforts of our people versus where do we think this actually might get in the way of producing those excellent outcomes that only our people can do. I think what has been cool about this from the people space perspective is it has allowed us to position work in such a way that we can say, look, we all get into this space, into this work, to think of those exciting, innovative opportunities to continue to drive our workforce forward and invest in our people. And so tools like this, we should be thinking about how to leverage them in order to do that, in order to free up the mind space, the time, share, all of those things, to be having those rich development conversations as opposed to the kind of rote transactional work. And so that's sort of how we've been having that conversation on the team. And then other teams have taken this into places where I never would have thought of it myself. I don't know that our technology heads would have thought of it themselves, but really allowing people to help define what opportunities they see, working with them then to pair them up with the folks that have the knowledge, the resources, the expertise to help to create those tools, and then running these test experiments inside of our own business to see how it's working, what tweaks do we need to add, and everybody kind of getting into the mix of innovation and improvement on an iterative scale. It's 3 I's, right? So a full-on alliteration. Has been really exciting. And it's also said, look, we don't need to be responsible for identifying every place in the business for this to go. This should be a true partnership with our people because they're going to know best where there are inefficiencies, where there are opportunities, or where they are most excited to test and play and try things out. And so that's sort of what we've been doing over the last 2 years for sure.
So I want to get your take on something because, or maybe just hear your thoughts on this. Because just recently, I was at an event that I was there to speak and do some work there. It was a national kind of top workplaces, best place to work kind of awards celebration. And there was a conference, educational part of it. And at one point there was a panel, and the panel, they were talking about AI and their organizational approach. And this is like, there was a CEO and the rest of them, I think, were like chief people officer levels. These are mid-sized organizations, I would say. And it was super interesting to me. One of the things that they said is they were asking kind of how they were approaching it. And maybe three of the four that were on the panel made some comment. Like the one CEO, he said, well, our leadership team, we really spent a lot of time with this. And then we made the decision that we're going to be people first. And what that meant to him was like, or at least the way I interpret what he meant or what their business meant is like, AI is not going to replace our people. We're going to be people first. It was sort of like a choice between the two. And so they're like, people are always going to want to call and talk to our people. The relationship we have with our people, with our customers is central and first. And so they kind of put AI on the back burner. Another organization on the panel kind of said something similar, like AI is never going to replace these things that our people do. And therefore they're kind of putting it on the back burner. Later, there was another organization, a huge organization that talked about, and the moderator pushed them about AI. They're in retail. And she's like, it makes no, and he's saying, no, it doesn't work. We've started experimenting. It's not working with our customer base. And it just was really interesting to me because what it felt like was them saying, okay, we sat down as a leadership team and we had to make a decision. Is it people or is it AI? And we're choosing people. And on the one hand, there's the Workhuman cheerleader part of me that's like, okay, good for you. Like it's like we want leaders. How many, we'd trip over ourselves to find leaders who say, we're putting our people first at, above everything. And it's like, that's great. That's amazing. I love leaders like that. It's incredible to hear that. But on the other hand, it also felt like a Blockbuster moment. It felt like me listening to, Blockbuster talk about how Netflix will never be a thing back in the day. And so I don't want these people first leaders to go the way of Blockbuster. And so I'm curious if you could speak to that, because it feels like you're finding a path through this that is the third option. It doesn't have to be people or AI. There's something like you can do both of these, and you're doing that. So I'd love for you to just talk a little bit about how you think about that. And maybe if you were giving some advice to folks that are saying that or are sort of in that headspace, what would you tell them?
I have so many thoughts. So I will try my best.
Let me have them.
I will try my best to organize them. But if at the end of this you go, I have no idea how to interpret that, then I'll try again. So
Okay.
Listen, I will tell you that when we started the conversation, the more robust discussions around AI as a leadership team is how I'll put that. We said we wanted to be AI first. And I think as an organization called Workhuman, we don't have to say it's or people. No, what we're saying is, how do you put the people and the technology together to create that excellent experience? We literally sell software that allows people to build deep, rich connections with each other. We believe that these things can enhance each other. They can make each other better. An example that I will use until I'm retired, and probably still then, is our first AI hackathon that we had internally. We said, we want ideas from all of you. Submit your ideas on what you think AI could help you solve. And then we had a team of experts, right? Folks from the AI space, folks from the tech engineering space, folks from the product space, and folks from research and analytics, who we said they will come and help you evaluate and think through and see if there's a there. So we kind of run this process. And long story short, the idea that won and that we then implemented and has gone on to win awards in different kind of industry settings came from our call center teams. And what they said was, look, we answer calls all day. They didn't say this, but I'm going to tell you this. The context for me was, this is a high turnover role where typically when people are calling customer service, it's not because everything has gone right and they just want to let you know, right? And usually by the time they're calling customer service, it's because I tried absolutely everything in my power to not speak to a human being and I couldn't solve it on my own. So now I'm frustrated. And so for them, they're on the phone and they're trying to solve, okay, have you called before? Can you give me a minute? Let me read those customer notes. And every second that a person is on hold, you risk them escalating. And so for them, they said, well, what if we had an AI solution that as soon as the number calls, it can recognize it and say, this person has called before. So it's likely one of these three things that they're calling about because this issue is still unresolved. And so as soon as I say hello to you, there's no putting you on hold. It's, hey, I just want to check. I see that there's this unresolved issue here. Is this what you're calling about? Okay, great. Let me make sure that we're tracking this. I have this update for you. Here's where it is. And now all of a sudden, if I'm on the other end of the phone, I go, oh, okay, well, great. Thank you. And now I'm done with my call. And now for that customer service agent, they don't have the adrenaline rush of the constant stress and fight or flight response that your body is under when you're trying to talk somebody down. That has been a game changer for us. We would not, I'm telling you, as a leadership team, I believe we are all brilliant people. We would not have come up with that solution on our own. We would not have said that that was a top priority for us in terms of leveraging AI. But it is because our people decided it. And so for those organizations that are saying it would never work for our customers, we weren't starting from a place of replacing the people. We were starting from a place of enhancing the experience that our people can bring to the customer. And that's where I think people get tripped up in the or. That's why you hear the horror stories of an entire call center decided to replace its staff with AI and it went off the rails really quickly. Yeah, you need people. I'm sorry, the future, yes, is AI, but it's also people. Without the people, the AI has nothing to learn from, has no way to know where and how you want things to go. And I think it's in that calibration that people are going to be really important. And that's always where people, human beings, have been unique in our species, right? Is because we're able to rationalize and reason and calibrate down. And so for us, Even in our latest product launch, right? We called it Hi, not just because it's adorable, but because it stands for human intelligence. It's taking the human and partnering it with the intelligence to say you can get much richer insights, you can get much richer outcomes, you can have a better experience when you bring these two things together. And so what I might suggest is that we stop saying that leaders need to have all of the answers, especially in this, unknown territory and world that we've been in since the pandemic threw everything up in the air, and now you're adding AI on top of it. And instead saying, look to the collective genius in the people. We are hiring people because we believe that they're smart, because we believe that they can do a job. Yes. But when we start getting into things like untapped skills and future talent and all of those things, you got to start in your own population and say, what's untapped here that we hadn't considered? And if you've really hired the right people and fostered a culture that people are truly bought into, they're only going to want to give you the suggestions that they think will help the business. And that's where you can get a lot of your potential solutions, your trials, et cetera, from. And that, to me, goes back to the thoughtful versus careful. Careful says and thoughtful says it's both. I just don't know what the right mix is, and we'll figure this out together.
I love that. Quick follow-up question, because it strikes me as you're talking, what occurs to me is that one of the opportunities in this is that because generative AI has done all of these things or accomplished these things that are like holy moly moments, right? If you've asked it to do things or, gone and you're just like, what? And it kind of cooks it interrupts what you thought was possible. And because of that, I'm wondering if it's like, it feels like we have this moment in time to use this conversation, kind of like what you're doing, to invite people to think about how we can make work better using AI. I'm doing air quotes right now, because people's notion of what AI is basically anything that we didn't think was possible may now be possible. So what ideas do you got? And I'm wondering, I guess my follow-up question is, when you did your hackathon, I'm curious, you're a tech company, so probably this maybe isn't as common, but how many ideas did you get that really had nothing to do with AI, but were more about automation or more about just process improvement or more about a different way of doing something that just was made possible because we were inviting them to think beyond what they currently consider possible?
So I will tell you, the first year that we did it, I want to say something like 60% of the ideas submitted were really about automation and process improvement. I would say last year when we did our second one, maybe it was 50%, right? And this is what I think is so interesting to me, and why I wanted to start with, hold on, we're all saying AI like we know what we're talking about, but are we all thinking the same about this? What it actually spurred was for us to put on our strategy board a key theme around operational efficiency. Because we're like, we have a ton of ideas about process improvements. These are likely things we should have been investing in all along. But it took us saying, no, AI is this and not this, for us to surface all of those things and say, well, I could spend 20 minutes with you, and then you're telling me that this would save your team 3 hours a week. What are we doing, right? And so those were the things that I almost got. Somebody is going to get mad at me for saying this, but I almost got more excited about those things than I did the other, because to me, what's beautiful in this is saying, I'm not going to give you a choice. I want you to think about how you would use this. And I don't want to give you the definition. I don't want to tell you what's right or wrong. Just brain dump to me all the ideas that you have. And that's where you start seeing the sparks of, yes, those things that fall into the AI bucket. And we had this whole idea around one of the ones that won this year was from my team. And it was, what if we took our recognition platform and we were able to tie it to the strategic initiatives that we have, and then we could see just like by a barometer of what kind of recognition is going on, where are we making progress? And does that show some correlation? And does that also start to identify folks that you would not think of as core to that initiative as being really critical to helping these things stay moving and keep their momentum? But the ideas that didn't win, but were really high on the list by popular vote were can we have a Slack bot automation around Workday, around benefits, around IT tickets? And it's like, yes. And so we said, great, these are top finalist things because people voted for them. We're not going to say they're the AI hackathon winner, but we moved forward on those things anyway. And now those are the things that people are singing their praises of. I can just go into Slack and I can approve time off in Slack. And that means I don't have to go into a separate app. And I'm like, oh, are we talking about in the flow of work and how it makes things so much easier, right? Like these are traditional topics that we talk about all the time, but this is it in practice. And so whatever gets people energized for us to be able to say, we want to have a culture of creativity. We want to have a culture of inclusion where anybody can share their ideas, and then we can figure out, are those the right ideas for us to invest in for our business? That's what we mean by that. And so I think for us, the AI hackathon has been both this like immense joy of each year over year, we like double the number of ideas. We get hundreds of ideas. So the vetting process takes a little bit longer, but that means that more and more people in the organization are bought in. And the last thing I'll say to this is, look, even our CEO has said, you should be first drafting things with AI. AI is not great for like the finished product, but it is great at an initial draft. It is great at getting you out of your head. We've even seen this in our tool, right? We now have this suite of advisors is what we call it. And so we've always had the inclusion advisor as part of our tool, but now we also have had for a while the reward advisor that kind of helps you to discern, well, how much of an award should I attach to this moment of recognition? But also now this advisor that helps you to gauge, like, is my message specific enough? Is it hitting on the right topics? How meaningful will this be when it lands in the receiver's hands? And so it's that same idea of how do you continue to help people along the way to say, I don't want you to spend time on that initial draft yourself. Save that time. I want you to finesse it because that's what I hired you for, is how you think about the things that we already kind of have a sense we should be doing, but how would you approach it? What is it that you can bring that no one else can bring? And I think that that's, especially as a people leader, those are the conversations that bring me energy, not the ones that are like, how are we going to get here? Although I do that too.
Yeah. Well, we have to, right? I think I love that. I think so much opportunity in it. I mean, it's, at least what I'm hearing from you is an invitation to really, when you say and, right, it's both. And you can kind of be thoughtful about it, and you can recognize there's so many opportunities within at least this moment in particular with AI, to just open people's minds to involving people in it, thinking about what's possible, and that'll lead you to lots of good places. And so I love that kind of call to action, is be thoughtful and explore, because there's a lot of opportunity there. Well, we are running short of time. I could talk to you for the next couple of hours, but we need to land this thing. So I have a couple quick questions to kind of close out. One that I like to ask every HR leader I talk to is, what is a challenge that you are currently facing?
Maybe I could be quicker if you said, what isn't a challenge you are currently facing?
What's a top challenge?
Look, I think it's this idea of future skills in the workforce. And one of the reasons I suspect it is such a challenge is because I think people expect the answer to be drastically different than what we currently have in the workforce. And I don't know that that's true. I think what it is that we're saying we need people to be more well-rounded and less kind of excellent in operation and execution, and more excellent across operation and execution, yes, but also the people aspects of the work, which I think for a long time we've let folks slide away from unless they had manager in their title for some reason. And so as we think about those future talent skills, I wonder if it's moving either towards or away from this idea of generalists again, right? Like the pendulum kind of swings. Do you want the all around generalist? Do you want the specialist? What do you want? And it's more this balance of within the humans that we're bringing in, how can we ensure that there's a level of high EQ in addition to the tangible skills that you look for?
Interesting. So our skills challenges may actually be a development challenge.
I think so. I think
like,
I think we went really far in the skills direction and the highly specialized and all those things, right? Think about like you have people analytics, but then you also have business analytics. You can break down all of these, roles into segmentations and specializations. But I wonder if what the pandemic didn't teach us is that at the end of the day, if you can't get through a human conversation with a person, you're going to be lost. And you can't just say, well, that's on only the managers or that's on only the leaders or only your HR team. And so I do wonder what that balance is. And look, I'm happy to be wrong and to have folks far smarter than me say, no, this is actually what it is. But I'd be suspicious of anything that comes out as the answer or the key that doesn't include a bit of that.
That's really interesting. And I think that's a super interesting thought. It's like the fact that we've been underdeveloping some of these skills probably maybe always is finally kind of coming into focus because it's easier to develop technical skills than it is human skills. And so we've leaned into that, and now we've got to get back to the stuff that's harder. Maybe AI can help us with that. Actually, I think AI does help us human better in some very interesting ways.
Well,
your tool is doing that.
Think about how easy it is in any given organization that has a, quote unquote, high performance culture for a manager to sit down and write a performance review that can be endless, right? And to be in that process like 14 months out of the year. But then when you say write a moment of recognition, that blank keyboard, it's like, I don't even know where to begin. And so it's literally that, right? Like, how do I connect with you as a human and less as an evaluation of your product or what you produce?
All right. Last quick question for you is, I always love to ask people to kind of look into their crystal ball and give me a hopeful projection. So as you think about work 5 years from now, how do you hope work will be different than it is today?
I hope that we continue to see progress in the people space as a strategic key partner to the business and integral to the business. I hope that we continue along this idea of how do we support and enhance the people within a business such that we get the best results. And I think maybe lastly, I hope that we come to a place where we can redefine how we think of productivity and performance measurement such that we don't allow people to get away with being bad humans or subpar humans. And instead we say all of this matters, right? Both the what and the how. I think that's something that we still have not quite figured out. And once we're able to kind of crack that code, I think it will do amazing things for the working experience being more human and for finding that right balance.
Love it. Thank you for that. All right. As we close out, I always like to ask kind of a closing checkout. So in one word, how are you feeling as we wrap up our conversation?
Activated.
I feel delighted because this is everything I hoped it would be. And in a few short weeks, I will be sitting there sort of in the audience watching you talk with Trevor Noah and I can go, hey, I know her. Actually, I know her. That's going to be a pretty cool moment. So KeyAnna, thank you so much for joining me. This was really fun and incredible insights. And I love this conversation. I hope that we'll be able to carry this into the conversation that we're having at Workhuman Live. Thanks for making time.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I hope all conversations go like this one. This was a lot of fun.
Awesome. Well, for those that are like, oh my goodness, I have to get to Workhuman Live, which is the correct response, you can go to workhumanlive.com and look everything over. You can look over the agenda and all the amazing speakers that are going to be there. Adam Grant is opening it up. It's going to be fantastic. So get signed up. You can go find KeyAnna on LinkedIn. I will include all of these links in the show notes, so it'll be easy to find. Go link up and follow her, or better yet, come to Colorado and meet her in person yourself. So thank you for being here. Thanks for listening. I hope that you can take back some inspiration. I hope that you will take back KeyAnna's call to action around AI, right? Be thoughtful versus careful. Look at the opportunity and seize this moment, because it is an incredible moment we have in front of us. And perhaps most importantly, please remember, check in with those who matter most to you. Maybe the most important thing you can do today. Till next time.